I stood outside the restaurant for a long moment, watching my family arrive one by one through the glass. Laughter spilled out before the door even opened. The same laughter that had followed me my entire life. I did not want to be there, but my mother had called earlier with that familiar soft voice heavy with guilt telling me everyone would be there and that it mattered. That was exactly why my chest felt tight as I finally stepped inside. The air was warm and thick with perfume and grilled meat. Before the hostess could speak, I saw them. My family gathered around a long table, already drinking, already loud, already performing. Tyler noticed me first. My cousin always noticed me first. His smile was sharp and empty as he lifted his glass and said, "Well, look who finally showed up." Heads turned, eyes judged. He laughed and said, "This table is for family. Danny, you can sit somewhere else." Laughter followed. My aunt pretended to be shocked. My uncle smirked. My mother stared down at her plate. I felt nothing on my face, because I had lived this moment too many times before. Without a word, I pulled a chair from a nearby table and placed it close enough to hear them and far enough to keep my dignity. This was my role, the outsider, the quiet one, the one they loved to measure themselves against. Tyler had always been the golden child. Perfect grades, loud confidence, easy charm. He learned early how to make me feel small while looking impressive to everyone else. They used to say I was jealous or humorless or broken in some small way. What they never saw was how every insult carved something harder inside me. While they laughed, I worked. I saved. I learned. I built a life quietly without their help. The waiter came and took orders. My family did not hesitate. The most expensive steaks, premium sides, top-shelf drinks. They ordered like people who never planned to pay. When the waiter turned to me, I asked for water. Tyler laughed and told him to bring me the biggest steak and a rare scotch. I did not argue. I just watched them play their parts. My mother laughed too loudly. My aunt dropped names she barely knew. My cousins bragged about vacations and cars. It was all noise, all image. I knew the truth behind it. Mortgages, debt, fear. Hours passed, plates emptied, bottles drained, desserts came and went. The restaurant grew quiet as other tables cleared out. Then the moment arrived. The waiter placed the black folder in front of me. Tyler leaned back smiling like he had won something. He said, "Thanks for treating us tonight, Danny. Real generous of you." Silence fell. Every eye locked on me. My heart sank as understanding hit. He had planned this. He had told them I was paying. I opened the folder slowly. The number stared back at me like an insult. My cousin mocked me and said I was rich now, so I should act like it. I looked at the faces around the table. Not one of them questioned it. Not one of them defended me. Something cold settled in my chest as I realized this was not a joke. This was a trap. I closed the folder and looked straight at Tyler. I said, "I never offered to pay for this and you know it." He laughed and leaned forward, telling everyone I was just being modest. My aunt looked confused. My uncle avoided my eyes. My mother looked torn but stayed silent. That silence told me everything. They believed him because they always had. It was easier than believing me. Tyler kept pushing, saying I always talked about doing well, and this was my chance to prove it. His voice dripped with fake concern. He wanted me cornered. Pay the bill and accept the humiliation, or refuse and look cheap in front of everyone. For a moment, I considered ending it quietly. I could afford it. But something inside me snapped. I was tired of swallowing poison to keep others comfortable. I slid the folder across the table back to Tyler and told him, "You planned this, so you pay for it." The table erupted in whispers. Tyler's face flushed as he accused me of backing out. I stood up slowly and felt years of restraint fall away. I said, "Since we are being honest tonight, let's stop pretending." I told him his promotion was a lie and layoffs were coming. I told him his expensive watch was fake and his lifestyle was built on debt. With every word, his confidence crumbled. The table went dead quiet. My mother reached for my arm, but I stepped back. I told them I was done with lies and performances. I told them I spent my life trying to earn a place here, and there was never one for me. Tyler stared at me like he had never seen me before. I picked up my jacket and told him, "You wanted a show, now you have one." Then I walked out. Outside, the night air felt clean. My phone started buzzing before I reached my car. Calls, messages, panic. I did not answer a single one. For the first time in my life, I felt light, like I had finally put something heavy down. The next morning I woke to missed calls stacked like warnings. Messages from numbers I knew too well and some I did not recognize. I made coffee and stood by my window watching the city wake up like nothing had happened. My phone rang again. This time it was my mother. I answered because part of me still hoped she would finally see me. Her voice shook as she told me the restaurant had called the police when Tyler tried to leave. My uncle had offered his card, but it was declined. In the end, they had called my cousin Jane to come and pay the bill. What bothered my mother most was not the lie or the trap or the years of cruelty. It was the shame, the public embarrassment. She asked how I could do that to them. I felt heat rise in my chest. I told her Tyler set me up and lied to everyone, and they believed him without asking me a single question, just like always. She said I should have paid and handled it privately. I laughed and told her that was always her answer. Silence. Pay quietly. Protect the image. Bleed politely. She said family protects family. I told her we were not a family. We were people bound by blood and lies. I said I was done trying to earn a seat at a table where I was never wanted. She whispered that I needed them. I told her calmly that I did not. Then I ended the call and blocked her number. I blocked Tyler. I blocked my aunts and uncles one by one. Each name disappeared like cutting a rope that had been choking me for years. It hurt, but it also healed. Messages came from new numbers for days. I ignored them all. A week later, Tyler showed up at my apartment. I watched him through the door camera, looking smaller than I remembered. He knocked and called my name and apologized. He said it was just a joke and things were hard and he needed help. Alone. Family helps family, he said. I told him blood does not make family. Respect does. Then I told him to leave or I would call security. He left without another word. Months passed and silence became my new normal. Through mutual contacts, I heard pieces of their collapse. Tyler lost his job just like I said. My uncle's business started failing. My aunt sold jewelry she once bragged about. The shine they worked so hard to maintain began to peel away. I felt no joy hearing it. No victory. Only a quiet sadness for what we could have been if honesty had ever mattered. 3 months after the restaurant, my mother sent a handwritten letter. It arrived thick and careful like everything she ever did. I read it slowly. She wrote about my childhood, about sacrifices, about blood and duty. She spoke of forgiveness and family bonds that could never be broken. What she did not write hurt more than what she did. She never admitted what Tyler did. She never admitted her silence. She never admitted choosing image over me for decades. I read the letter again, then fed it into the shredder. The sound was final. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. 6 months later, I accepted a job in another city. New streets, new faces, no history, no roles waiting for me to play. As I packed my apartment, I found an old photo album filled with smiles and perfect moments. I flipped through it once and saw the lie for what it was. I closed it and put it in a box marked donate. Someone else could have the empty frame. My new city felt like breathing again. I bought a small, clean apartment and filled it with quiet. I made friends who never asked me to prove myself. People who listened. People who stayed. For the first time, my life felt honest. No performance, no defense, just peace. A year passed, then 2, and the sharp edges of the past slowly dulled. The anger that once kept me awake at night faded into something calmer, a steady awareness of my worth. At a dinner with friends, someone casually asked about my family. Without thinking, I said I do not have one. The words surprised even me with how true they felt. A friend laughed and said everyone has a family. I smiled and said I have people I am related to by blood, and that is not the same thing. Later that night, I walked home under the city lights and thought about who I had become since that night at the restaurant. I was healthier, lighter. I no longer jumped when my phone rang. I no longer measured every word waiting for ridicule. I no longer needed permission to exist. I had built a new family without realizing it. Friends who showed up. Colleagues who respected effort, not image. Neighbors who cared without obligation. These people never asked me to shrink so they could feel tall. They never turned love into a transaction. Sometimes I still heard updates about my old family. Their lives continued unraveling without an audience to perform for. I felt no urge to return. Their journey was no longer mine. I had chosen something real. One evening I stood on my balcony watching the sky fade into deep colors. City lights blinked on like quiet promises. I thought about how freedom does not always come from gaining something. Sometimes it comes from letting go. I had let go of their approval, their expectations, their lies. And in that space I found peace. That night I went inside my apartment and set my keys on the counter. The space reflected who I was now. Calm, honest, lived in. Books lined the shelves. Photos of friends filled the walls. No forced smiles, no family portraits hiding pain. Just truth. Just quiet. I stood by the window and watched the city move below. Every light belonged to a life, a story, a version of family. I realized I was no longer angry. I was no longer waiting for an apology that would never come. I had already moved on. Freedom had changed my posture, my voice, my sleep. I did not feel empty without them. I felt full. I felt grounded. I felt safe in my own skin for the first time. Sometimes strength looks loud and explosive. Other times it looks like walking away and never looking back. I chose the second, and it saved me. I picked up my phone and called my closest friend. I invited her over for dinner the next night. She laughed and said she would bring that bread I loved. When the call ended, I smiled to myself. This was my family now, chosen, real, earned through respect. As the sun set over the city, I stepped onto the balcony and let the cool air wrap around me. The sky burned with color before slowly fading to night. I thought about how far I had come from that restaurant, from that table where I was never truly welcome. 2 years of silence had given me more peace than a lifetime of trying ever did. I no longer felt that tight knot in my chest at the thought of family gatherings. I no longer rehearsed conversations in my head. I no longer feared being small in someone else's shadow. Walking away had not made me weaker. It had made me whole. I understood something then. Family is not who shares your blood. Family is who shares your values, who protects your dignity, who sees you without trying to change you. I had found that family in unexpected places, and it felt real in a way blood ties never did. I stayed there for a long moment, watching the stars fight through the city glow. Some still managed to shine. I smiled, knowing I was finally one of them. I went back inside and closed the door behind me. The noise of the city faded and my home wrapped around me like a promise. I realized the revenge was never the words I spoke at that table or the bill I refused to pay. The real revenge was living well without them. Living honestly. Living free. They had tried to make me feel small my whole life and failed in the end because I walked away carrying my self-respect with me. I did not win by staying. I won by leaving, by choosing myself when no one else ever did. I poured a glass of water and stood quietly, letting the moment settle. There was no anger left, no hunger for apology, just acceptance. Some people are meant to be lessons, not lifelong companions. That night I slept without weight on my chest, no voices in my head, no fear of tomorrow. I had built a future on truth, and it felt solid beneath my feet. I was no longer the outsider looking in. I was exactly where I belonged. I once believed family was something you endured no matter the cost. That love meant silence, and survival meant shrinking yourself to fit where you were never meant to belong. Walking out of that restaurant did not just end a dinner. It ended a lifetime of chasing approval from people who only valued appearances. I did not lose a family that night. I gained myself. I learned that peace is not loud, and freedom is not dramatic. Sometimes it is just the quiet certainty that you no longer owe anyone access to your life. I built something real after letting go of what was fake, and that choice changed everything. If you have ever been made to feel small by the people who were supposed to protect you, then ask yourself this one question: how much longer are you willing to pay the price for someone else's comfort? If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Echoes of Revenge for more real stories about strength, boundaries, and quiet justice. Your voice matters here, and your story might be the next echo.